Okay, thank you. My name is Salome Velez, and I am currently a student at East Tennessee State University, working on my master's in social work. And I'm currently taking a class that requires me to interview a government official, local or state. And you were recommended to me by a coworker, Mr. Christopher Franklin.
Okay.
And if you could please state your name and your title for me, please.
Dan Armstrong, I'm the District Attorney General for the 3rd Judicial District of Tennessee.
3rd Judicial District, what does that mean?
Well, the state of Tennessee is divided into 31 judicial districts,
Okay.
and every judicial district has an elected DA,
Okay.
so there's 31 of us in the state.
Oh, so you're an elected official.
Yes.
Oh, so you have,
My
how long is your term, sir?
8 years.
Okay.
My district includes Hamlin, Hawkins, Hancock, and Greene.
Oh, okay. And 8-year term.
Yeah.
Very well. I'll just make a note for myself. Term. Okay. And so like I mentioned, the class that I'm taking really deals with poverty, homelessness, policy, and how those things interacting, movable parts interacting together affect a domino effect in essence. And for you, what you do as a district attorney, is that something, is that mainly criminal cases that you do? Is that all you do?
It's not all I do, but
Okay.
it is the vast majority of what I do. That's my number one job, is to prosecute crimes.
Prosecute crimes. Okay. So forgive me for asking those simple questions. I'm just not super familiar with that. So one of my first questions for you is, what do you see as maybe the biggest challenge in our area economically with what you do? Do you see it impacting your client? Are they your constituents, or how is that like?
Well, I mean, I'm elected by the voters.
Okay.
The population of my district's about just under 200,000 people.
Okay.
I can't relate anything that I do and not mention the drug epidemic. That is the biggest problem facing the criminal justice system. And that has impacts, economic impact as well. The number of crimes that we prosecute on a yearly basis has gone up because of the drug epidemic. Any employer, I think, in this district will tell you they have a hard time finding people that can pass a drug screen.
Mm.
So it has economic impacts that way. I would never equate poverty with crime in and of itself,
Okay.
but I do understand poverty has some impact on crime, but I would never say that poverty causes crime.
Okay.
One of the things that was interesting is back when the Great Depression
Mhm.
happened, the crime rate in this country actually went down. So that's kind of counterintuitive that poverty causes crime. Having said that, I understand that poverty puts pressures on family.
Sure.
It probably helps drive the drug epidemic, although the drug epidemic is happening in all social classes. Not just, we see it in every area of the population. We see it all socioeconomic classes.
Okay, so it doesn't discriminate that way.
It does not discriminate that way.
Yes. So you mentioned that poverty doesn't necessarily, isn't a causal factor, but it's certainly a contributing factor to the crime.
I don't think you can discount the pressure that poverty can put on people.
Okay.
Having said that, I've never seen poverty as an excuse or a reason for criminal activity, a
Okay.
valid reason.
As far as, so that might lead me then, I think a good segue to my next question. Are you particularly, maybe your office staff, do you see perhaps a change in policy or lack of funding to specific areas, withdrawing from that, or that's being shortchanged in some way? Do you see that that has a direct effect on the people in your area, in your district? Or is that something that you're not really privy to because of?
I can't think of any kind of social or economic policy of the government that's driving crime, other than to say that, when you're talking about poverty, you're talking about not just economic disadvantages, but poverty of the home.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we have so many kids that are being raised in a single parent house has an absolute effect on crime. The crime rate among children raised, and this is not a knock on single parents, it's just the reality. Single parent, children that come from single parent homes have a higher tendency to be in the criminal justice system. So it's very important from looking at it from the criminal justice side that both parents be involved in a child's life.
Right.
And if that happens, then the child has a much better chance of escaping the criminal justice system and not getting caught up in it.
And being pulled into that negative downward spiral cycle. Okay. What in these counties that you are over, what do you see? Do you identify maybe as the biggest lack of resources? Is it, for example, is it low employment opportunity? Is it lack of social or infrastructure such as public transportation? Is it maybe lower, and I don't know, I'm throwing these as suggestions out there, lower education maybe from some of the residents, or maybe a little bit of all of that? I don't know.
Well, I'm sure all those factor into it. What I see from, as far as resources, what I see from where I sit is we don't have the resources to deal with the problem we have in the criminal justice system, which is the epidemic drug problem. Jail is the main resource of the criminal justice system. In other words, if you commit a crime, you're gonna go to jail. Well, we've got a different criminal now than we used to have. We have people who are committing crimes because of their addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But for their addiction, they would not be involved in criminal activity. So we've got to think outside the box on what we do with those people. Should they be convicted and punished? Absolutely. But we've also got to provide rehabilitation for them.
So treatment services.
So the lack of funding I see is the lack of widespread availability of rehabilitation services for those who have gotten caught up in the criminal justice system and want to get help. And the direct cause of them being in the criminal justice system is their drug habit.
Okay. And I can certainly speak from that on a professional level, being an employee of the Department of Children's Services.
Yeah.
We kind of tend to see the same people traffic through the different systems, whether it's criminal or the juvenile courts. Okay, and I think, do you, as an elected official, are you required to live in the area that you serve?
Yes, I have to live within the district. Yes.
Okay. And are you a local person? Are you from this area?
I've lived here since 1986 in Greene County.
Okay.
I married a Greene County girl. I grew up in Memphis.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Best barbecue in the state.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Oh, Stan's is pretty good in Greenville.
I have never I've never eaten there.
Stan's is good.
See, my favorite is, we have a very serious discussion, sometimes heated. I like commissary in Germantown, and someone likes Bozo's, which I've never been to.
Yeah, that's out in Mason, Tennessee.
But people get pretty serious about their barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
What then would, in talking from your experience, from what you deal with, your office deals with, would be maybe, obviously one solution isn't going to fix the problem, because this is a macro problem, this is a larger problem, and not everybody who has drug problems wants the rehabilitation. But certainly if those services were offered, we might be able to have some intervention and deflect further, crime. And but what would you, if you had the opportunity to have funding available through your office to maybe present a specific program with the population that you work with, the population that you serve,
Well,
how would you allocate those funds?
let me answer that by saying, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I'm involved in a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies for their part in causing the addiction problem we have in East Tennessee.
I have to thank you for that, sir.
And I am, and part of the reason I did that was I think those who have falsely marketed their product as being non-addictive need to pay for the consequences of what's going on in our communities. And I get to now I'll get to your question.
Okay.
What I would want to do with any resources that come from that lawsuit would be to establish a regional rehabilitation center that would be an alternative to jail for those nonviolent offenders who have a drug problem. Right now, I can't think of a more perfect place to establish something like that than Green Valley and Greene County.
Mm-hmm.
It's already set up. It would take very little, well, when I say little, relatively speaking, it would take very little money to get that campus up and functioning as a rehabilitation center.
Okay.
So that's the pitch I've made to the counties that I represent in this lawsuit. That's what I've told them I would like to do with the money. And I think that's how we have to address the problem. The only thing that's going to change this problem is a change in people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something the government can do.
That
has to come from a higher source than the government.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree there. Unfortunately, being in a public office, being in a public position, you certainly are limited to certain things. But I think that's a great idea. I think that would be wonderful use of current resources. A new facility wouldn't have to be built.
Right.
And that would employ a lot of workers in the field that are already in this area that have to leave because there are no jobs for very qualified alcohol and drug treatment, like therapists, and probably other areas that there's some overlap.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly want to thank you for your time, after taking time out of your busy schedule, answering my questions, and good luck with your lawsuit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.